Hello, Dawn Moore at Allegiance Title Company. This is the second in a series of tips that we want to provide to help ensure a smoother transition for you to the new loan closing process imposed by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. First, before I get started, I want to make it clear that the new process only covers closings that involve mortgage financing. Cash transactions are not affected by these new rules and will close as before using the standard HUD-1 or settlement statement. So the old saying goes, cash is king. Now, for transactions involving mortgages, which is the most part of our business, these rules do impact our closing process. The rule that I am focusing on in this tip is the rule that the lender must provide to the borrower a closing disclosure which replaces the HUD-1 at least 3 business days before the borrower signs on the note. This is a hard and fast rule and cannot be waived by the borrower. The lender must have and retain evidence in their file that a closing disclosure was provided to the borrower 3 business days before they signed the note. Each lender will create their own policies and procedures for providing such evidence in their files. However, please note that there is a safe harbor rule in the CFPB rules, which state that if the borrower is mailed or emailed the closing disclosure at least 6 business days in advance of signing the note, then there's a presumption that the buyer has received it 3 business days. This is a safe harbor for the lender. And I will tell you that in a communications that was sent out by Wells Fargo on Monday to settlement agents, they said in their memo, and I quote, "In most cases, CD delivery will occur 7 days prior to closing to rely on the presumed receipt provision of the rule." This protects the lender. The reason they say 7 days is because the rule actually says 6 business days. But business days for this rule are every day except Sunday and national holiday. That's where they come with the 7 days. So, tip number 1 for this video. Plan for a waiting period to be tacked on to your closing date in your contract. If you experience a normal 30-day closing for most of your closings, you need to move that closing date back to 40 or 45 days. This will cover this waiting period. Because as you know, most 30-day closings are situations where we get loan approval the day before, if we're lucky, and oftentimes the day of closing, and we scramble around to close the transaction. Under the new rules, you can't scramble around to close the transaction. You will get approval, the lender must send out the closing disclosure to the borrower, and then we have to wait. There is no waiver of this rule. So, tack on another at least 7 to 10 to 15 days preferably to your normal closing date. If you have experienced 30-day closes, that makes it a 40 to 45-day closing. If you've had 45-day closings, tack on another 7, 10 to 15 days on that 45-day closing. Protect your buyer from being in default by adding enough days under the closing date for the waiting period. Next tip. TAR has produced a form for you called Authorization to Furnish TILA-RESPA Integrated Disclosures. This is Form 2516. This form needs to be signed by your buyer and or seller and provided to the title company. The form will allow the title company or lender to deliver you, the broker or broker representative, a copy of the closing disclosure. The CFPB has taken the position that the closing disclosure contains non-public personal information that you are not privy to. Without this authorization form, the title company will not be able to provide you a copy of the CD, and you will not have an opportunity to review it for any corrections or changes that are needed. Get this form signed when you take your listing and or when you have your buyer representation signed. Provide it to the title company with the contract. As we approach October 3rd, I hope these tips help you have a smoother transition to the new process. Allegiance Title is ready, and we want you to be ready too. Thank you.